All right, it's Catch Aids, the heavy metal picker here. And I had a few questions for John Gallagher, and rather than do an actual whole interview, I figured it would just be quicker for my purposes to send him a $4.99 cameo. It's okay, I can afford it. All right, so the first question I had for him was who was the guy doing the low vocals at your 1997 tour when you played in Piqua, Ohio? You were on mushrooms. Some guy named Patrick was on drums. So, give you some context here. Yes, this is 1997, and back then, for Purification Through Violence, that tour they were playing as a five-piece. Some other mystery singer was doing John's parts. No, not Jason's parts, John's parts. And this guy was 5 foot nothing, wearing a wife beater, and I thought later, like, was that Vince Matthews? But this guy was like very skinny. And so anyhow, this guy was doing the low parts for John, and John was whacked out on mushrooms. And I remember he was wearing baggy shorts. He was wearing a hoodie despite how hot the venue was, and he was wearing a backwards cap. Jason Netherton was not wearing a cap at this particular show because by this time he'd grown out his hair really long. So yeah, Patrick wasn't a terrible drummer, but he just wasn't up to Dying Fetus's standards. So anyhow, neither Patrick nor this mystery vocalist are mentioned on Metal Archives. But anyhow, here is John's answer to that. Hey, what's up, man? Spelled W-A-S-S-U-P, so he still got some wiggerish going on. The dude singing was Chris Apilitis. A-P-I-T-I-T-I-S. We used to call him Apple Nuts. Yes, I was definitely on shrooms. Yeah, Pat on drums. He sucked pretty hard. All right. One thing I remember about Pat at the show was when they played Skullfucked, there's this part where there's like, this kind of clean guitar that comes in, and then there's a blast, and then there's more clean guitar and another blast. When that was being played, Pat just broke down into some slam beat, and then everybody turned around and looked at him. The four guys on the stage and people like me, like I knew what part was going to happen in that song, and I'm like, oh God. And then Pat just was like, oh. And if you remember, shortly thereafter, that show in Piqua, Ohio, they did a bunch of dates in Texas. And that is where and when they met Kevin Talley for the first time and his band Deity in San Antonio. I saw the Deity demo. You can look at the community section. I might upload it myself. But yeah, go ahead and check out Kevin Talley's Deity demo. It's so good. All right, but now let's move on to where I ask him about, is he ducking Justin Horval? No, I'm not ducking him. I've not received a formal request for an interview, to be honest. So, when you're selling more albums than Metallica and playing giant stadiums, you can't just approach a guy like John Gallagher after the show. You got to do a formal request. And only then will he let a peasant like you interview him. All right. Well, I understand it's, but even I never met John even back when I saw him in 95, 97. He always hid backstage. He was always that type of person. I've spoken with Jason Netherton, and then their fill-in drummers. I spoke with Pat, spoke with Casey Buckler, Brian Latta, who else? Yeah. But yeah, I've never met John in person, ever. And I've seen Dying Fetus like 8 times. Last question here, where I ask him about his mugshot from 2011. Haha, it's weird. I was just talking about my DUI tonight. I was so high and effed up I can't recall if they took a mugshot. I don't actually think he's playing dumb here. A lot of musicians will like, oh, that was so long ago, I don't remember. But by his own admission in the Chris Garza podcast, he said he was messing around with, not just weed, but Xanax. And I've only snorted a small piece of a Xanax once in my life, and it was like a tiny speck. But from what I gather, and what I've seen in others, people who are into Xanax and all that, they just forget everything. So I would not be at all surprised if he had a booking photo and he didn't remember it. I don't know what the policy in Maryland is for first-time DUI offenders. Like, they could have just taken him and then just released him to a friend or a family member. I've been having trouble finding my own DUI mugshots. But anyhow, the charge must not have stuck too hard. Maybe it was lowered or perhaps even dismissed because Dying Fetus still doesn't seem to have a problem with touring Canada. If you got a DUI conviction and you're a musician, goodbye Canada. Well, unless you're Motley Crue, you can, actually kill somebody in a DUI accident and still get in there no problem. All right. Tell me what you think.